Revered in Hinduism, cows for millennia have been integral to Indian society. India today has the world's largest population of cows and buffaloes, just over 300 million. India's dairy industry was given a large boost by Operation Flood. Launched in 1970, this national program aimed to significantly raise milk production in India. Operation Flood facilitated the creation of dairy farmer cooperatives, which still include millions of Indian farmers, and established a national grid of milk. India now is the second largest global producer of cow's milk and the top producer of buffalo's milk. In 2010, India produced 112 million metric tons of milk, 44% more than in 2000. In the 4 years between 2003 and 2007, India's population of cows and buffaloes increased by 21 million. The top milk-producing states are Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Punjab, and Andhra Pradesh. The beef industry is growing too. Although India has a long history of ethical vegetarianism, beef from buffaloes and cows constitute a regular part of the diets of India's Muslim and Christian communities. Beef is also eaten by some Hindus and is a relatively cheap source of protein for the poor. Beef from buffaloes is also a thriving export business. Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Meghalaya, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, and Maharashtra are the leading producers of beef from both buffaloes and cows. Because slaughter of cows is legal in only a minority of Indian states, cows regularly undergo brutal long-distance transport. Long overland treks without food or water are common. Unlike India's poultry and egg industries, the dairy and beef sector are not yet heavily industrialized along the lines of the Western model. A majority of Indian dairy operations remain small-scale. Still, more intensive production methods exist in India's peri-urban areas, where hundreds of cows may be housed and chained in place. In addition, mega dairies are being built with investment from foreign agribusinesses. These facilities can hold anywhere from 5,000 to an astounding 40,000 high milk-yielding cows in factory-like conditions. As India's milk and meat industries grow, ecological and ethical challenges are rising. Climate change is one. Enteric fermentation, the result of ruminants' digestive processes, is the source of 63% of greenhouse gas emissions from India's agricultural sector. India's methane emissions from livestock, a greenhouse gas with at least 20 times the global warming potential of carbon dioxide, are the world's largest. Indigenous cows emit less methane than do high-producing imported breeds, but the latter are gaining in popularity. Dairy and beef production also require substantial inputs of water for pasture, fodder, feed, and for the animals to drink. Drought or insufficient rainfall, both of which are expected to increase in much of India due to climate change, makes grazing land less hospitable, cultivation of crops less predictable, and water for livestock harder to come by. As dairy and beef production expand and intensify, competition between India's animals and its people is likely to heighten. A World Bank study concluded that by 2020, India's water, air, soil, and forests will be under more pressure than those of any other country in the world. By 2050, India's population is projected to reach 1.6 billion people. It's fair to ask, can India produce enough food for its people and also support hundreds of millions of cows and buffaloes in increasingly industrial conditions? And can it do so while protecting its natural resources and the global climate? As populations throughout the world become more affluent, they consume greater numbers of animal products. The globalization of Western systems of intensive livestock production is spurring on this trend, increasing the availability of cheap meat. This phenomenon can be seen in India, where the spread of industrial livestock facilities, particularly in the poultry sector, is eroding the country's 2,000-year-old culture of vegetarianism. India now is among the top producers of meat chickens in the world. Demand from India's growing middle class is fueling the growth of packaged and frozen chicken meat. Nutrich Chicken is one such brand that is targeting wealthier consumers in the nation's capital of Delhi and is available in Walmart and local chain stores. The chickens live out their short lives, roughly 40 days, in sheds where they are housed by the thousands. They are then transported to Nutrich's processing plant, where workers slaughter and process the birds. Many of the workers are migrant laborers from Nepal who live on site and return home once a year. On the processing floor, over half the plant's workers are women from nearby areas. A handful of corporate entities control India's burgeoning poultry sector, and as in factory farms across the world, corporations work to replace indigenous breeds with international hybrids. 3 multinational companies currently own 90% of the breeds used in India's poultry industry. There are battery cage facilities throughout the country. These facilities range in size from 10 to 150,000 birds. Life at the battery farms follows a strict timeline. The hens arrive in the facilities as day-old chicks and start producing eggs when they are about 6 months old. They continuously produce eggs until they are 18 months old, at which point they are typically slaughtered and sold. The conditions in these battery cage facilities are distressing. It is not uncommon for the birds, who are agitated and tightly confined, to be covered in sores from rubbing against the cages day after day. The workers in the facilities do not typically wear masks to protect them from the ammonia, dust, feathers, and other particulates in the air, and many of them manage the facilities in sandals or barefoot. The intensive farming of India's broiler and battery cage chickens is no small feat. The process requires major inputs of grain, electricity, and water, and produces significant amounts of poultry waste. Soy and corn are poultry feed staples and come largely from the big agricultural states. The country's largest feed mill is located in Haryana and packages 10,000 tons of grain each month. India's booming poultry feed industry and the high global commodity price of soy are attracting more and more of India's farmers to soy farming. The automation and refrigeration associated with industrial livestock processing requires more electricity than traditional slaughtering methods. Water is another important input, and it is not uncommon for plants to use as much as 80 to 90,000 liters of water per day for scalding, defeathering, washing, and freezing the birds. This allocation of resources raises important issues of equity. Though some modern slaughterhouses in India do have their own wastewater treatment plants, on the farms themselves, water and waste runoff often collect on site, leading to problems of surface and groundwater contamination. While it is common for local farmers to visit the sites to pick up poultry manure to use as fertilizer, this process is rarely regimented. As a result, the manure accumulates outside of the facilities and can be carried away with rainwater runoff, polluting neighboring fields and waterways.